Hello, my dear friends. I'm so glad to see you. Today, I want to talk to you about China's possible influence on Russian war in Ukraine. Some people may ask, why are you paying attention to these visits? Are they related anyway to Ukraine? And my short answer would be yes. I think the key to the finish of the Russian war is in Beijing now, and all the leaders in European Union and in United States know that, and this is why. Before I can move forward, I want to remind you, my dear friends, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, so you will help to develop this channel. And what is more important, share the information. So to help sharing the information, you may send to the people you know in the text messengers or Facebook. To support me with this job, in details down below, you may find my PayPal address. Now let's move ahead. As I mentioned before, I think at the moment the key to stopping the war is in Beijing, because this is the moment where Russia is exhausted in the war. Russia still can fight for some time, but its ability to fight decreases dramatically in terms of manufacturing and logistics. It happens because they have significant losses, and this is the moment when they already lost. Now I'm giving you the list of things that they lost during this year of war. Tanks 3631, artillery guns 2714, RCZV 532, air defense means 281, airplanes 306, helicopters 292, UAV, it means an aircraft that carries no human pilot or passengers, 2287, cruise missiles 911, ships means boats 18, cars and tankers 5574, special equipment 302, and troops, both soldiers and officers, about 176,630 people. At the beginning of the war, Russians had approximately 20 millions artillery shells. 20 millions. First 4 to 5 months, Russians fired 30 to 60,000 artillery shells daily on the whole front line from Kharkiv Oblast to Mykolaiv Oblast. Oblast means area, district, kind of state. And the distance was more than 1,000 miles. Now Russians can fire 10 to 15,000 per day, but the front line is also decreased by Ukrainian forces. So now, logically, we just need to know the math. How many shells can Russian industry produce daily and monthly? Unfortunately, we do not have exact data, but unofficial numbers are 3,000 per day, which means in 3 or 5 times less than they strike. So there will be a moment when they will have no shells to fire, unless China can supply shells and other ammunition to Russia. So this is the key factor. Will China support Russians or not? And this is the key to finish the war. If China supplies no shells to Russia, in a couple of months, Russians will need to stop the war or at least make the front line length according to their industry capabilities. If we transfer the amount of ammunition that they can produce, the amount of shells that they can produce, to the length of the front line, we will see that Russians will be able to keep occupied only the territory of Luhansk, Donetsk cities, and probably Crimea, the parts that they were occupying before February 24, 2022. Let me show you this on the map. So this dark red part and this dark red part, this is Crimea, this is Donetsk Oblast and Luhansk Oblast, areas that were occupied before February 24. And this pink area, they are occupied last year after February 24, 2022. So when we are converting these areas to the amount of missiles, the amount of shells that Russian industry can produce, I consider they can keep only for these areas in a month or two or maybe three. These pink areas are much easier to deoccupy by Ukraine because citizens of Ukraine who live here were living in Ukrainian society with Ukrainian mass media, education and everything all last 8 years. So they are much more pro-Ukrainian than the guys who live here and here, because Russians were occupying this territory all last 9 years. So they just killed pro-Ukrainian activists or just citizens in Crimea and in Luhansk and Donetsk areas. Or these people just escaped somewhere to Russia and then back to Ukraine or to other countries. So these people doesn't live here anymore. Now, as you can see, this is just a little part of Ukraine. And before February 24th, 2022, Russia was able to occupy this territory since Ukraine didn't have long distance shooting weapons. I mean that, let's go back to the map. It means that Russians had warehouses with the missiles, with the shells, somewhere in the occupied Ukrainian territory, let's say here or here, and we didn't or in Crimea, somewhere here, and we didn't have the missiles that were able to strike these warehouses on the occupied territories. We didn't have that length weapons. But now we do have HIMARS and other equipment that will let us shoot their warehouses with the shells that are not on the front line. So they will not have a place to hide from Ukrainians on Ukrainian occupied territory. Russians will have to move their warehouses exactly to Russia. As you see, the math says Ukraine can win soon, in a year or something, if China gives no weapons to Russia. However, math is tricky, and according to the math, Ukraine had no success to fight against Russia in the first month. So let me show you it higher. So these green areas, they were occupied by Russians in the first month. And when we trying to calculate Ukrainian forces and Russian forces, February 24, 2022, I can say that the math was against us. We couldn't fight with Russia according to the math. By the way, this area is also occupied by Russians, but it's a part of Moldova. They name it Pridnestrovia, and there was always such a name, but it always was part of Moldova, and they occupied it, I think, in 1990 or 1991, something like that. And their forces are still here, so they were trying to connect forces from going from Crimea, Kherson, and Mykolaiv Oblast to Moldova, and another second part from Kyiv Oblast, and then they wanted to connect them somewhere here, like this way, and occupy all this territory in 3 days. That's what was their idea. So, as I said before, math is tricky. And according to the math, Ukraine had no chances to fight against Russia in the first months, when there were almost zero weapons supplies from the democratic countries. And let's see carefully what happens in the political field around China. You probably already know that China and the United States are in a kind of contrast. So China principally doesn't want to hear what has been said from the United States, as a Chinese country managers consider United States as an enemy or at least a competitor. The last power, to my mind, the last power in the world that can impact China is the European Union and its leaders. And this is what they're trying to pursue right now. Also, as you probably know, there was a visit of China's leader Xi Jinping to Russia that started March 20th, 2023 and finished 3 days later before it has been planned to finish. So there was a common conference scheduled, but it has been cancelled, and China's leader went home before he had to. So nobody knows what happened in between this meeting, but thanks to God, we still see no Chinese shells on the front line on April 7th, 2023. But this can be changed in a close future. And to keep this Pandora door closed, European Union leaders trying to work with China. President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, visited China, and the results are not yet public. Also, November 2022, Olaf Scholz, head of Germany, has visited China, and we know almost no details of this visit, although they definitely discussed the war. What I can understand for sure is that China wants more perks, and the United States and European Union try to give them these perks, more investments to the Chinese economy. And good example is the grain route in Ukraine. Probably like many of you guys, I was curious all the time why Putin agreed to have the grain route in Ukraine as it gives a lot of money for Ukraine. And the answer is China again. Highly likely the grain route has been asked to be approved by Russia from China. Before the war, China did procurement of the grain from Ukraine in the amount of 6 million tons in 2022, in 2020, 6.3, and almost 7 million tons in 2021. But in 2023, these days, guys, 3.1 millions just in 3 months with the huge discount were shipped to China. If the supply amount remains the same, China will buy 12.4 million tons of the grain, that will be twice more compared to the previous years. As you can see, this war is very beneficial for some countries who declare they have a plan of peace. It seems the Chinese plan of peace was just a piece of plan to earn money and find new benefits. The only one thing that gives a hope is that Chinese economic policy highly likely has the same approach to the relationships with Russia. So probably China will not supply Russia shells unless Russia can pay money, and will be able Russia to pay money or not, we will try to figure out in the following videos. Also, the Chinese influence on the world economy and military situation grows and becomes extremely important, and it is negative and dangerous for the democratic countries, to my mind. And when we are speaking about China, it is worth keeping in mind it is officially communist country with the dictator as the head of the country. Dear friends, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you'll not miss my videos, and share the information. Text messengers, Facebook, use anything. To support me with this job, you know there are details down below with my PayPal address. Also, I want to thank you, all the people and all the countries that support Ukraine. God bless you and your country. So this is all for today. Thank you for watching this video. Bye bye.